Hello everyone and welcome back to the sessions on financial reporting. Friends, in this class of financial reporting, we are continuing with the topic Ind AS 103, that is business combinations. This is the fourth lecture on business combination. Now friends, in all the earlier classes, if you can recap what we have learned in this chapter, we have learned what is the meaning of business. We have learned what is a business combination, how business combination is different from simply an asset acquisition. We have learned how to identify whether a given transaction is a business combination or not. We have further learned the acquisition method, where the acquisition method is itself a step-by-step procedure where you first understand to identify who is the acquirer. Then we have learnt how to identify the acquisition date. We have learned how to determine the amount of consideration. We have learned how to measure and recognize any goodwill arising on business combination, or we have also learnt how to measure and recognize if there is any amount of gain on bargain purchase that arises on business combination. That was all done in the earlier classes. So friends, basically if you have learned all those things, basically you are prepared with how to take the business combination. However, there are lots of specific issues that needs to be addressed. Those specific issues we will be discussing today in this class one by one. We will discuss the issue, we will discuss its accounting impact and the acquirer, how the acquirer company will be taking over the same. Now friends, most important thing, right from the beginning till now, we have always been talking about accounting in the books of acquirer, correct? It is all about the acquiring company's accounting records. Ind AS 103 has nothing to do with the acquiree, means the transferor of the business has not to apply Ind AS 103. Ind AS 103 is primarily applicable for the entity which is the acquiring entity. So friends, in this sequence of lots of special issues, we will begin with a situation of consideration which is settled in the form of assets other than cash. We can simply call this as non-cash consideration. Now in this regard, if you can recall, we have learned something already. In the previous class, while discussing how to arrive at consideration or how to determine the amount of consideration, we have discussed this point briefly, that the consideration can be settled either in cash or by giving away other assets or by issuing securities. So generally three forms of settlement of consideration you will find: payment in cash, giving away other assets, and issuing debt or equity instruments of your own company, that is the debt and equity instruments of the acquirer. If you are giving cash, there is absolutely no point of conflict. However, if you are settling the consideration by giving away other assets, we have learned one thing, that the other assets must be given away at fair value. That means the amount that you should consider for the value of asset given away has to be the fair value. Likewise, if you are issuing your debt or equity instruments, that issue also has to happen at fair value. However, there can be differences between the carrying amount of an existing asset which you are giving away as compared to its fair value at which you are giving away. That difference will result into a gain or loss that will arise at the date of acquisition, and that gain or loss will be directly recognized in the statement of P&L. Likewise, when you are issuing your own securities, that is debt or equity instruments, those issues must happen at fair value, but the face value of the instrument can definitely be different, right? Difference between the face value and the fair value will be recognized as a component of equity under the head securities premium. So friends, if I give you a simple example, suppose our company has acquired a business and for settlement of the consideration we have given away a piece of land. The carrying amount of that land in the books was rupees 50 lakhs and the fair value of that land was rupees 65 lakhs. So as per the requirement of Ind AS 103, the land which is being given away has to be measured at fair value, that is 65 lakhs in this example. But the carrying amount existing was just rupees 50 lakhs. As a result, difference between these two will obviously be considered as the gain arising on transfer of land, and that gain will be immediately recognized in the statement of P&L. So friends, whatever I have discussed, let us write some notes about the same. Please pay attention on the screen. So we have just talked about non-cash consideration. In this regard, you may write the first point as, if the consideration is settled by transfer of assets other than cash or by issue of debt or equity instruments of acquirer, then such transfer of assets or issue of instruments should be at fair value at acquisition date. Second point, when assets are transferred at fair value, the difference between the carrying amount and fair value shall be recognized as gain or loss in the statement of P&L. Third point, when securities are issued at fair value, the difference between face value and fair value shall be transferred to securities premium. So friends, quickly take note of this and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and discuss the next concept, that is direct cost of acquisition. Now friends, in this regard, the point is very simple. When an acquirer is acquiring the entire business, it is an obvious thing that there will be lots of incidental expenses that the acquirer will have to incur towards this business combination. As a result, what should be the treatment of those expense is the question mark. So, first thing first, these expenses are not any asset specific. That means these expenses cannot be capitalized to any asset. Moreover, each asset which you are acquiring in this business combination is being recognized at fair value already. So, there is no point in adding those expenses to that asset or capitalizing those expenses to any asset. What you need to do is, this whole acquisition cost will be treated as a separate transaction cost, a cost which is related to business combination, and as per the requirement of Ind AS 103, this cost will be charged off as an expense in the statement of P&L. So, if this amount is included in the consideration, that means suppose it may happen that the consideration has been arranged as rupees 80 lakhs and we have asked the acquiree that, boss, you incur all the expenditure, we will give you 80 lakhs. In that case, if it is known that the consideration includes a component of rupees 2 lakhs towards the acquisition cost, then Ind AS 103 also requires that the consideration should be measured at the pure amount of consideration only. So, purely the consideration will not be 80 lakhs in that example. In that example, the consideration will be 80 lakhs minus 2 lakhs, that will be rupees 78 lakhs. What will be done? If you are considering the amount of consideration as 80 lakhs, why it will be wrong? Because it will immediately affect the amount of goodwill arising on business combination. Unnecessarily, the consideration being more, it will increase the amount of goodwill arising on business combination, which is not permissible by the standard. Standard requires that you consider the amount of consideration only to the extent of the amount payable to the acquiree. Any amount payable as a cost towards that acquisition shall be removed from the amount of consideration and shall be separately charged as a separate transaction cost, and it will be charged in the statement of P&L as an expense. So, let us write down some notes about this. So, first write the heading direct cost of acquisition. The direct cost of acquisition is not included in determination of the purchase consideration. Cost which include like finder's fees, due diligence cost accounting, legal fees, investment banker fees, even bonuses paid to employees for doing a successful acquisition will not be included in the cost of acquisition. If the amount of purchase consideration includes such acquisition cost, then such acquisition cost shall be eliminated from purchase consideration and separately charged to P&L. Friends, first write down these notes and then we will solve certain questions relating to this concept. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up some questions that can clarify this concept. So question number 35, let us read this question. Should stamp duty paid on acquisition of land pursuant to a business combination be capitalized to cost of the asset, or should it be treated as an acquisition related cost and accordingly be expensed off? So friends, we have already discussed exactly this similar point while discussing the theory, that any kind of acquisition of asset which are part of a business combination, the acquisition related cost will be expensed out and it will not be capitalized. Now particularly with respect to land, stamp duty is capitalized in most of the cases, but to the extent the acquisition of land is part of the business combination, the cost incurred towards stamp duty will still be considered as acquisition related cost, and as per requirement of Ind AS 103, the same will be charged to P&L as a separate transaction cost or acquisition related cost, and the same cannot be capitalized as part of cost of the land. So let us move ahead and see how to write up the answer for the same. So it will be a little long answer. Go with me step by step. As per Ind AS 103, the acquisition related costs incurred by an acquirer to effect a business combination are not part of consideration transferred. These are costs that the acquirer incurs to effect a business combination. The stamp duty payable for transfer of assets in connection with the business combination is an acquisition related cost as described under Ind AS 103. It is a cost incurred by the acquirer in order to effect the business combination to acquire the ownership rights in land in order to complete the process of transfer of assets as part of the overall business combination transaction, but it does not represent consideration paid to gain control over business from the sellers. So friends, I told you it's little long answer, so write this much and then I'll show you the other part. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this much. Let us move ahead and write up the later part of the answer. You would write, as per Ind AS 103, assets and liabilities acquired in a business combination should be measured at fair value. While incurred in connection with a business combination, stamp duty does not increase the future economic benefits from the net assets comprising the business and hence cannot be capitalized. Accordingly, stamp duty incurred in relation to land acquired as part of a business combination transaction are required to be recognized as an expense in the period in which the acquisition is completed and given effect to in the financial statements of the acquirer. So friends, write up this much and that will be end of the answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up the next question, that is question number 36. Let us read this question. ABC Limited acquires PQR Limited on 30th June 2011. The assets acquired from PQR Limited include an intangible asset that comprises wireless spectrum license. For this intangible asset, ABC Limited is required to make an additional one-time payment to the regulator in PQR's jurisdiction in order for the rights to be transferred for its use. Whether such additional payment to the regulator is an acquisition related cost. So friends, once again question is putting you into the same scenario. See what is being acquired over here, wireless spectrum license. Now to operate this, obviously you will need to pay some fee to the regulator. That means without this asset the business combination is not complete, correct? This asset is part of the business combination, and to run this asset, to use this asset, if you are required to pay any separate fees to the regulator, obviously it will be still considered as part of acquisition related cost. So even though the cost could be little specific to the use of the assets, but still because the asset is part of the business combination, the cost will be considered as acquisition related cost, and the same will be expensed out when it is incurred. So the point is, this kind of cost again cannot be capitalized, it will be charged off as an expense in the statement of P&L. So let us see how to present the answer. In your answer you would write, as per Ind AS 103, the acquisition related cost incurred by an acquirer to effect a business combination are not part of consideration transferred. The payment to the regulator represents a transaction cost and will be regarded as an acquisition related cost incurred to effect the business combination. Transfer of rights in the instant case cannot be construed to be separate from business combination, because the transfer of rights to ABC Limited is an integral part of the business combination itself. The acquirer shall account for acquisition related costs as expenses in the period in which the costs are incurred. So friends, write up this whole thing and that will be end of the answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and now talk about the next concept, that is deferred consideration. So friends, deferred consideration simply means consideration will be deferred. That means it will be not settled now, it will be settled at a later date. Now what you have to do, let us understand the whole thing by an example. Suppose I am acquiring a business and the total consideration is rupees 80 lakhs. Okay. Now how am I going to settle that 80 lakhs? I will pay cash of 50 lakhs upfront and balance 30 lakhs I will settle after 2 years. That means out of 80 lakhs, 50 lakhs will be paid at the acquisition date itself, balance 30 lakhs will be paid after 2 years. So there is no contingency involved, no conditions involved, just a delayed payment. I want to acquire this business, I am ready to pay 80 lakhs, but I don't have enough money today. 30 lakhs I will arrange and pay after 2 years. This is my arrangement with the counterparty, that is acquiring. Now, in this case, if you take consideration as 80 lakhs, it will be wrong. What is the requirement of Ind AS 103? You break up that 80 lakhs into two components. 50 lakhs payable in cash at the date of acquisition to be taken as it is. Balance 30 lakhs payable after 2 years. You will not take it as 30 lakhs. You will take the fair value of that component, fair value of that part of consideration as the present value of that 30 lakh. Let us assume that the present value of that 30 lakh is 25 lakhs. Then we will take 25 lakhs for computing the consideration. So how would you record the calculation of consideration? Cash payment 50 lakhs and then the deferred consideration will be measured at its present value, that is 25 lakhs. 50 plus 25, the consideration will be 75 lakhs only, but actual payment is going to be from my pocket 80 lakhs, right? As per Ind AS 103, that balance 5 lakh will be basically an interest cost which will be recognized over the next 2 years, and we call this as unwinding of the component. That means we are unwinding the interest component included in that. So basically what you need to understand is you will record the cost of this whole acquisition in the form of consideration just as 75 lakhs, and balance 5 lakhs will be recognized as interest cost over the 2 years time. So friends, what we have discussed, let me give you a note on that. Pay attention on the screen please. So we are talking about deferred consideration. Deferred consideration, that is delayed consideration, which means payment will be made after certain time period. The consideration is not conditional but only delayed. Its fair value is the present value. At the end of every year, the deferred consideration will be unwound and finance charges will be recorded. So friends, quickly write down this note and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us now move ahead and talk about the next concept, that is contingent consideration. Now contingent consideration obviously means consideration is contingent, means the amount of consideration is dependent upon occurrence or non-occurrence of uncertain future events. That means there will be certain future events on which the amount of consideration is going to depend. That means the amount of consideration and whether that consideration will be paid or not itself is not clear at the date of acquisition. It may or may not happen, it is simply contingent. In such case, we call that component of consideration as a contingent consideration. So what is the requirement of Ind AS 103 in this regard? Ind AS 103 requires inclusion of that contingent consideration also as part of consideration, and this inclusion has to be made at the fair value. So let me explain this by giving an example. Suppose my company has taken over a business and the business has come along with all the workforce. That means the workforce of that business now continues under my ownership. So I have asked these new employees that, boss, you need to work in a complete diligent manner exactly the way you had been working for your previous employer. The business is same, employer has changed, I have taken over this company. If I find you working properly, I will give you some award for your efficiency. Not only that, to the previous owner I mention one thing, that if these employees perform in a rational manner, in an efficient manner over a certain period of time, then I will give you also means to the previous owner, I am giving them also some additional consideration. Now whatever benefit I give to employee for their performance, it is just within me and my employees, because now those employees are my employees. However, if I am giving something to the shareholders of the equity, the original shareholders of the equity, I mean, so if I am giving some consideration to them, it has to be considered as part of the consideration for business combination. That means the purchase consideration will include this component also. For example, if I have promised them that I will pay you a sum of rupees 30 lakhs in cash if your employees keep generating profit over a period of next 3 years in the same pattern as the company has indicated profits in the past. In that case, if I am paying that additional consideration of 30 lakhs, now whether that is payable or not cannot be known. So I have to simply use probable measures, as in whether that will be arising as an obligation on me or not in future. Considering all possibilities, I will work out a fair value. According to me, after declaring this, the fair value of that contingent consideration today at the acquisition date is suppose just 12 lakhs. Though I have made a promise to pay 30 lakhs, I will record today just 12 lakhs. Gradually, with the changes in the possibility of that obligation arising or not arising, with its probabilities changing, the amount of consideration will also change. That means the measurement or the liability towards that consideration may undergo changes. In such case, the changes in the measurement of that liability will be simply considered as a change in accounting estimate, and it will be recognized through the statement of P&L. Now there can be an exceptional scenario where the settlement of such consideration is in the form of equity. In such case, there will be no liability that arises because of this contingent consideration, but what arises is a component of equity. So depending upon how you are settling that contingent consideration, whether it is a financial obligation or is it an equity instrument, as per Ind AS 32, this classification will have to be made at the acquisition date, and accordingly the measurement of this contingent consideration will be made at the acquisition date and remeasured subsequently. However, if the component is identified as equity instrument, the equity component will be stated in the equity itself. Any changes in the amount will be recognized as a direct component of equity without touching statement of profit and loss. So friends, let us do one thing. Let us properly write down these notes and we will then take up questions in this regard. So we have just talked about contingent consideration. The consideration the acquirer transfers in exchange for the acquiree includes any asset or liability resulting from a contingent consideration arrangement. The acquirer shall recognize the acquisition date fair value of contingent consideration as part of the consideration transferred in exchange for the acquiree. The acquirer shall classify an obligation to pay contingent consideration as a liability or as equity in accordance with the requirement of Ind AS 32. The acquirer shall classify as an asset a right to return of previously transferred consideration if specified conditions are met. Write down all these notes and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and apply this concept in solving question number 37. Let us read this question. A Limited acquires B Limited in April 2020 for cash. The acquisition agreement states that an additional rupees 20 million of cash will be paid to B Limited's former shareholders if B Limited succeeds in achieving certain specified performance targets. A Limited determines the fair value of the contingent consideration liability at the acquisition date to be rupees 15 million. At a later date, A Limited considers chances that the probability of meeting the said performance target might become lower. How will the acquirer treat this component? Now friends, we have already discussed the same type of situation in the theory part. So what will happen is, the question is clearly giving the fair value of the contingent consideration liability at the acquisition date. So this fair value will be part of the consideration for business combination. Later on, if the probability of meeting the performance changes accordingly, this amount can either be increased or reduced, and the same will be considered as a change in accounting estimates. So let us see how to write up the answer. In your answer, you would first say, as certain consideration is based on achieving certain performance parameters in future, the consideration is contingent on achieving those parameters. As such, the transaction involves contingent consideration. Further, since the consideration is to be settled for a variable amount in cash, such consideration would be in the nature of financial liability rather than equity. At the acquisition date, the acquirer should consider acquisition date fair value of contingent consideration as part of business combination. And finally, you would say, accordingly, such recognition would increase goodwill or reduce gain on bargain purchase as the case may be. So friends, first write up this much and then I take you ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this much. Now let us move ahead and write the remaining part of the answer. The last paragraph in the answer will be, in the given case, if the chance of meeting the performance criteria becomes less probable, then the contingent consideration in the nature of financial liability should be remeasured and the impact for the change in the fair value should be recognized in the statement of profit and loss. And such change would be in the nature of changes in accounting estimates. So quickly write up this and that will be completion of your answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this answer. Let us move ahead and now deal with the next concept, that is share based payments. So here we are talking about a situation where it is the acquiring company which has made an announcement of share based payment and has either taken a share based payment liability or obligation upon itself or has created a share based payment reserve. Now that acquiring company is now shifting its business to the acquirer. Clear? So the question is, the share based payment of acquiring, how should the acquirer account for it? The answer is very simple. The share based payment of acquiring will be accounted for by the acquirer as if it was acquirer's own share based payment. That means if there is any liability towards share based payment, particularly when the share based payment are cash settled share based payments, in that case the obligation of the acquiree will obviously become now the obligation of the acquirer. In such cases, what you just need to understand is, irrespective of anything mentioned anywhere, you are simply going to follow the criteria of Ind AS 102, that is share based payment. Whatever Ind AS 102 requires shall be applied over here. So what you are going to do, you are simply going to treat as if those share based payments are your own share based payments. Now friends, in this regard, if you go little deeper into the concept, so you need to be little careful about what I am talking about. Imagine a situation where there is a company X Limited which has announced a share based payment and I have taken over the entire business of X Limited. That means X Limited does not exist after this business combination transaction. In such situation, whatever was the obligation of X Limited now becomes my obligation. That means I will have to record a liability towards share based payment along with the acquisition of all assets and liabilities of the acquiree. In such case, the measurement of that will be as per the requirement of Ind AS 102. Secondly, it may so happen that the company, the acquiry company, continues its existence because I have not acquired the business as such, or I have not taken away the net assets of that acquiry. What I have taken over is control over the acquiry. In such case, it is the acquiry that will maintain that share based payment liability or share based payment reserve with itself. What I have to do is only in relation to consolidation, I have to consider those required asset liability measurements and recognition, of course. So friends, in both scenarios, the moment there comes a question of measuring the share based payment liability, Ind AS 103 requires application of Ind AS 102, that is share based payment. Whatever Ind AS 102 says shall be considered as the basis for measurement. And now friends, similar to this is another point, that is about employee benefits other than share based payments. Now you know one thing, the employee benefits, this whole concept we have learned under Ind AS 19. So Ind AS 103, what does it require with respect to this point? Now consider the fact that the employees are the employees of the acquiry, correct? It is the acquiry company which has announced employee benefits, and now that business has been taken over by the acquirer. So what will acquirer do? Acquirer will not look into anything else. Acquirer will apply Ind AS 19 in such a manner as if those employees were acquirer's employees right from the beginning. That means the respective standards will be applicable when it comes to share based payment and when it comes to employee benefits. So let us write some notes about this point. So what we just discussed with respect to share based payments, the acquirer shall measure a liability or an equity instrument related to share based payment transaction of the acquiry, or the replacement of an acquiree's share based payment transaction with share based payment transaction of the acquirer in accordance with the method in Ind AS 102, that is share based payment, at the acquisition date. And then with respect to employee benefits, we have discussed this point that the acquirer records the fair value of the obligations for any post retirement obligation as per the principles of Ind AS 19, which is an exception of general fair value rule. So here you are not going to apply any other fair value, you will be taking the fair values as per the guidelines given under Ind AS 19. So friends, do one thing, write down these notes quickly and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this much. Let us move ahead and talk about the next point, that is assets held for sale. So here we are obviously talking about the non-current assets which are held for sale. So understand one thing very well. We are talking about the assets of the acquiree, correct? So acquiree's assets have now been taken over by the acquirer. So along with this business combination, obviously all the assets of acquiree are coming now in the hands of the acquirer. Two possibilities: acquiree itself was holding the assets as non-current assets held for sale, or second possibility, acquiree was using the assets as property, plants or equipments, and it is the acquirer which took over these assets, and now acquirer decides not to use these assets as a property, plant and equipment. Instead, let us dispose it off, and until disposed of, it is the acquirer that is willing to classify these assets as non-current assets held for sale. In such case, for either possibility, the valuation of these assets will be exactly as per the requirement of Ind AS 105, that is non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operations. So let us write a note about this. Pay attention on the screen. So what we have just discussed is about assets held for sale. The acquirer shall measure an acquired non-current asset or disposal group that is classified as held for sale at the acquisition date in accordance with Ind AS 105, that is non-current assets held for sale and discontinued operations, at fair value less cost to sell in accordance with that Ind AS. So friends, quickly note down this and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, after writing up this note, let us move ahead and now talk about something very important, that is leases. Now friends, please carefully understand the whole discussion about leases over here. Now we are talking about a situation of business combination where the acquiree has entered into a lease arrangement prior to the business combination. So there is a business combination happening, and prior to the business combination, the acquiree has entered into a lease arrangement. So the question is, how should acquirer record the lease arrangement of acquiree? Because the lease assets and liability, whatever arise in the books of the acquiree, now will have to be the assets or liability of the acquirer. So how should acquirer record the same? Now friends, in this regard there are two possibilities. Possibility number one, that the acquiree in the lease arrangement, the acquiree was a lessee, and second possibility is that in the lease arrangement the acquiree was a lessor. So depending upon whether the acquiree was lessee or whether the acquiree was lessor, you have to consider the treatment in the books of acquirer. So friends, let me give you this by way of an example. Consider myself as A Limited, and there is another company B Limited which I am acquiring. That means A Limited acquires the business of B Limited. It is a business combination happening today. So if it is a business combination happening today and A Limited is the acquirer, now A Limited is looking into one thing, that B Limited already had a lease arrangement with another company and B Limited was a lessee in that lease arrangement. If B Limited was a lessee, then B Limited must have a lease liability and B Limited must also have a right of use asset. We have learned these things under Ind AS 116, that is leases. So obviously the acquiring company, that is B Limited, would have these two assets and liabilities in its books. So how should I recognize those assets and liabilities in my records? That is the question. So in this regard, you should first be clear with Ind AS 116 requirement. So let me explain a bit of that. As per Ind AS 116, the lease liability for a lessee, the lease liability indicates the present value of the future lease payments, and in most cases the ROU asset value is also determined in accordance with the lease liability. And how to do that we have learnt in details under Ind AS 116. So when A Limited is acquiring B Limited along with the other assets and liabilities of B Limited, what comes to A Limited is that lease liability and ROU asset. So Ind AS 103 requires the acquirer to recognize this as a new lease, as if acquirer has entered into a lease arrangement at the acquisition date. That means here we are not talking about the fair values, we are talking about the measurement of lease liability and ROU asset in the books of acquirer, considering that acquirer has entered into a new lease arrangement, and based on that acquirer has to identify the future lease payments and determine the present value of the same, and therefore acquirer will recognize a lease liability at the acquisition date as if this was a new lease arrangement entered into by the acquirer itself, applying all the requirements of Ind AS 116, that is leases. That is one thing. Now there may be a possibility that the acquiree, that is B Limited, whose business is taken over by A Limited, that acquiree has entered into a lease arrangement of small valued asset or a lease arrangement where the remaining lease term is now a short term. Short term means less than 12 months. In such cases, you know one thing, that Ind AS 116 offers exemption to the lessee not to apply Ind AS 116 requirement. So not to go for that detailed accounting, those exemptions will be available to the acquirer as well, provided it has to fall in one of the two categories. Either it has to be an asset of low value, that is a lease of a low valued asset, or it has to be a short term lease. The decision about short term will be from the acquisition date till expiry of the lease term. Now the acquirer will recognize the lease liability and accordingly measure the ROU asset, that is right of use asset. Now here there can be a small additional point that Ind AS 103 requires. Now acquirer has to look into a possibility that what are the lease terms compared to what are the prevailing terms in the market. So if the lease payment as per the market terms and lease payment in this arrangement are at par or similar to each other, then no adjustment needed. ROU asset can directly be determined. However, if the market terms and the terms under the lease arrangement which we are talking about are significantly different, that means either the lease arrangement is a favorable one or an unfavorable one, depending upon what are the rentals as per the given agreement as compared to the rentals prevailing in the market. So if it is favorable or unfavorable, what you have to do, lease liability will simply be the present value of all the future lease payments. The adjustment of favorable and unfavorable terms has to be made with ROU asset. So what will happen with all the other assets and liabilities of the acquiree? What will come to acquirer is that ROU asset, which is measured after considering the favorable and unfavorable terms, whatever the case may be, and the lease liability. So automatically, if there is any difference between these two, that will affect the amount of goodwill or gain on bargain purchase that is arising at the date of acquisition. So that was all about the case of lease where the acquiree was a lessee. Now what happens if the acquiree was a lessor? If the acquiree was a lessor, then there is absolutely no problem, no adjustment required. Whatever were the terms and conditions as per the arrangement made by the acquiree as a lessor, same arrangement is carried forward. No adjustment will be made over here. So in case the acquiree being a lessor in a lease arrangement, no adjustment shall be made with respect to whether the arrangement is favorable or unfavorable. Whatever were the terms of the lease arrangement, same thing will be taken over by the acquirer. So friends, in this regard, whatever notes I am putting on screen, please carefully note down, particularly the case where the acquiree was a lessee. So let us first write about the first possibility, that the acquiree is a lessee. The acquirer shall recognize right of use assets and lease liabilities for leases identified in accordance with Ind AS 116. The acquirer is not required to recognize right of use assets and lease liabilities for leases for which the lease term ends within 12 months of the acquisition date, or leases for which the underlying asset is of low value. The acquirer shall measure lease liability at the present value of the remaining lease payments as if the acquired lease were a new lease at the acquisition date. The acquirer shall measure the right of use asset at the same amount as the lease liability, adjusted to reflect favorable or unfavorable terms of the lease when compared with market terms. So friends, please take note of all these points and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing all these points. Let us move ahead and now write about the other possibility where the expiry is a lesser. In measuring the acquisition date fair value of an asset, the acquirer shall take into account the terms of the lease. The acquirer does not recognize a separate asset or liability if the terms of an operating lease are either favorable or unfavorable when compared with market terms. So friends, note down this whole thing quickly and then we shall move ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this note. Let us move ahead and now talk about the next important point, that is indemnification assets. Now in a case of business combination, just imagine a possibility that during a business combination the acquirer identifies possibility of an additional obligation that may arise in future which the acquiree has not recognized. Basically, we are talking about a contingency which may create a contingent liability which was obviously not recorded by the acquiree, but acquirer believes that such liability may materialize. So it is a possibility that a contingent liability may materialize. So obviously the acquiree has not recognized, but the acquirer will be in a condition to recognize the same. So that is basically contingent liability and that becoming materialistic. I am not talking about just that contingency. What I am talking about is if the acquiree, the counterparty, is assuring the acquirer that boss, if this kind of liability arises, don't worry, we will pay for it. In that case, we say that the acquiree has indemnified the obligation that may arise. Let me explain this by way of an example. Suppose I am A Limited and I am taking over business of B Limited. Prior to this takeover, prior to this acquisition, B Limited was having some dispute with one of its customers, and the customer has started legal proceedings and claiming an amount of rupees 2,50,000 from B Limited. So customer has made a legal proceeding claiming 2,50,000 from B Limited, and the court case is yet to be settled. Because this was a contingency, B Limited did not recognize this liability. As per the requirements of Ind AS 37, B Limited is just reporting a contingent liability. Now when we go through the financial statements of B Limited and when we come across that contingent liability, we are asking B Limited, boss, what is this contingent liability for? Then they provide us all the information that this is the case. Then we happen to even meet the customer, talk with the customer, and we find that, boss, customer is justified in making this claim, and there is a big probability that court may agree with the claim made by the customer. That means there is a big chance that the liability may materialize. We are asking B Limited that, boss, you have not recorded this liability. If we consider this liability, we have already agreed for a lump sum consideration. We will be further incurring a loss if this liability turns up to be material. The counterparty, that is B Limited, is providing an assurance that, okay, there is a possibility, we don't deny, but if there is any amount more than 1 lakh that the court asks you to pay, any amount in excess of 1 lakh, we will reimburse to you. That means B Limited is indemnifying A Limited for any losses that can happen beyond 1 lakh rupees. In other words, to the extent of rupees 1 lakh becoming payable, it will be loss of A Limited, acquirer. Any loss beyond that will be indemnified or will be compensated or reimbursed by B Limited. This is the scenario. So what will happen in that example? A Limited, the acquirer, is definitely considering the whole amount of 2,50,000 as its liability. It is considering that liability and making a provision at the acquisition date. But knowing one fact, that 2,50,000 being the amount of that liability, nothing beyond 1 lakh rupees will be payable by A Limited. Even if paid, it will be reimbursed or compensated or indemnified by acquiree, that is B Limited. In such case, A Limited will simultaneously record two things: the provision for that contingency, full amount 2,50,000, and the indemnification asset. That means there will be a simultaneous asset with an amount of rupees 1,50,000, which is indicating a possible recovery from the counterparty. If the amount of liability turns to be 2,50,000, the limit for which A Limited has to bear the loss is only 1 lakh. Therefore, the balance 1,50,000 will be settled by B Limited. So, while recording the acquisition entry, that is the entry in which all assets and liabilities of acquiree are recognized by the acquirer, the same entry where goodwill or gain on bargain purchase may arise, in that same entry you will add two more components: the provision for that contingency 2,50,000 and indemnification asset by 1,50,000. So in that whole transaction situation, you are recognizing an extra liability of 2,50,000 and you are recognizing an additional asset of 1,50,000. So what is truly your loss? That will be just 1 lakh. And obviously, because that is being recognized along with the acquisition of assets and liabilities of the acquiree, obviously that difference of 1 lakh will affect the goodwill arising on acquisition. So friends, I want you to carefully note down this whole thing and then we will solve a question in this regard. So we were talking about indemnification assets. The seller in a business combination may contractually indemnify the acquirer for the outcome of a contingency or uncertainty related to all or part of a specific asset or liability. As a result, the acquirer obtains an indemnification asset. The acquirer shall recognize an indemnification asset at the same time that it recognizes the indemnified item, measured on the same basis as the indemnified item, subject to the need for a valuation allowance for uncollectible amounts. So friends, do one thing, please take note of this whole thing and then we shall proceed with questions. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. Let us move ahead and take up question number 38. Let us read this question. A Limited acquires B Limited in a business combination on 1st April 2020 for a total consideration of rupees 50 lakhs payable in cash. Net assets of B Limited were rupees 44 lakhs without considering a liability towards a customer. B Limited is being sued by one of its customers for breach of contract for rupees 2,50,000. B Limited provides an indemnification to A Limited for the reimbursement of any losses greater than rupees 1 lakh. There are no collectability issues around this indemnification. At the acquisition date, A Limited determined that there is a present obligation towards such contingency. How should A Limited deal with this? Now friends, this is the same example which we were discussing some time back. So if you can identify what is given in the question, the total consideration is 50 lakhs and the net assets other than this particular liability is 44 lakhs. So if you don't consider this liability, what you find is the consideration exceeds the net assets by rupees 6 lakhs clearly. On top of that, because of this contingency, A Limited will now have to record a present obligation, that is a liability of rupees 2,50,000, and because any loss beyond 1 lakh will be borne by B Limited, that is by way of reimbursement, B Limited shall reimburse the same to A Limited. What A Limited will do is record the liability of 2,50,000 and simultaneously record indemnification asset of 1,50,000. And how we get 1,50,000? That is this 2,50,000 minus 1 lakh. So what will happen is, by that net difference of 1 lakh, which will be a loss to A Limited, the amount of goodwill will increase. So goodwill amount that will arise will be 6 lakhs plus 1 lakh, that will be 7 lakhs. So let us see how to present this whole answer. In your answer, you would first write, at the acquisition date, A Limited determined that there is a present obligation and therefore the fair value of contingent liability of rupees 2,50,000 is recognized by A at the acquisition date. At the acquisition date, A Limited also recognizes an indemnification asset of rupees 1,50,000. Quickly note down these two and then I shall take you ahead. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this note. Let us move ahead and write the recognition entry passed by A Limited at the acquisition date. So net assets debit 44 lakhs, indemnification assets debit 1,50,000, and then you will record the liability towards that contingency 2,50,000. You will also record the consideration due, that is 50 lakhs. Now, if you can check, the total in the credit is 52,50,000, total in the debit is 45,50,000. So there is a clear difference of rupees 7 lakh that will obviously be recognized in the name of goodwill, and that is the balancing figure in this entry, that is rupees 7 lakhs. So I have already discussed with you, this 7 lakh is basically a result of 6 lakhs of excess of consideration over net assets, and then 1 lakh additional loss that is arising because of this contingency has also been now included along with this goodwill. Now, once this recognition entry is passed, you will then pass one entry for settlement of consideration, that is 50 lakhs paid in cash. So friends, quickly take note of this, and that will be end of the answer. Alright friends, you would have finished writing this whole thing. So time for us to put an end to this session. Let us declare this as end of part 4. Friends, before you start up with the next class, obviously you know what you are supposed to do. You are supposed to revise and practice everything that we have learnt by far. Keeping the command over the whole topic will require lots of revision and practice, and particularly lots of revisions of these theoretical concepts which we have done in this class. So let us declare this as end of part 4. Thank you so much for attending this class.